lecture by our good friend Tanya. Tanya's going to be talking about the history of divorce, and it is a topic that's near and dear to her because she divorced from her job that she had for 5 years yesterday. She's having a party week, so give it up for Tanya and give it up for the history of divorce.
Have I ever used the microphone before? All right.
Nope.
Nope. All right. Hello, everyone. So, I'm here today to be talking about the history of divorce. That's not something that I have a really first-hand account experience in. I'm just an aspiring divorcee. So, just leave it at that. So, let's start off with a quote by somebody that I am very fond of. This is by George Bernard Shaw, who is an Irish playwright, co-founder of the London School of Economics. He says, "When two people are under the influence of the most violent, most insane, most delusive, and most transient of passions, they are required to swear that they will remain in that excited, abnormal, and exhausting condition until death do them part." That is very practical, absolutely reasonable. Cool. So, let's talk about the modern day. This is a map of the world, if you guys were confused. And in the modern age, divorce is legal everywhere except for the Vatican City and the Philippines. In the Philippines, you can't get divorced, but you can get an annulment. That is very expensive. It costs about between $2,000 and $3,000 US dollars, and you also have to undergo a psychological assessment, which is another $300, something most people cannot afford. So you're kind of stuck. Everywhere else in the world? Absolutely. You can get out of there. All right. So let's go and talk about Greco-roman culture. So this is the first recorded instance of divorce. They were pretty chill about divorce. They were okay with it. If you were married and you felt like you were married the wrong guy and you wanted to get divorced, absolutely fine. All you have to do is go to the local magistrate and you would fill out an application for divorce, similar to where you get your W-2s. Did everybody fill out their W-2s? It's almost tax season. All right. Anyway, he reviews your paperwork and he says, "Okay, absolutely, you're free, you're single." These are 3 single ladies, and they're very happy to be running away from their husbands. Okay, great. Things don't change, we just get older. All right, what's next? Okay, like all parties, the Roman Empire ended. It really super duper fell, and and with that, a lot of things changed, like fun times. So in medieval Europe, you can't spell medieval without evil, right? Okay. They really brought the crackdown on divorce. Everything was really lenient before, but they were like, nope, no more. So by the 9th or 10th century, they decided to reevaluate it and said that it was a holy union and it was indissoluble by human people. That's redundant. So, if you did want to get a divorce, these are the grounds for divorce that were okay. Consanguinity. For anybody who doesn't know the definition of that word, that means finding out that you're actually related to the person that you're marrying. Adultery, sure. Leprosy, okay. Impotency, I get it. Failing to supply a male heir, though, totally fine. That's not grounds for divorce. Around this point in time, they thought that if God willed the father a daughter instead of a son, then the divorce had such a reason, and it had no reason, basically, if you went against God's plan to divorce, that didn't make God happy, so they didn't let that happen. So let's talk about the Protestant Reformation. This is when Martin Luther and John Calvin came in and fucked shit up. They were just not happy with the way that the Roman Catholic Church was telling people how to do things. So, One of the main troublemakers of the Protestant Reformation was, oh, here we go, here's one of the 95 Theses, was Henry VIII. Okay, just kidding, that's not what Henry VIII looked like. That's actually Jonathan Rhys-Meyers of the popular TV show The Tudors. I've never seen it, I hear it's good. So this is what Henry VIII looked like. He ate a lot. Alright, and he was married to Catherine of Aragon. She was his first wife, and she gave birth to 7 children total. 6 of them, the first 6, were either stillborn or female, so no male heir. He was not happy about that, so he tried to get a divorce from her. Tried to get a divorce from her. He really wanted a male heir. That, and also he had the hots for Anne Boleyn. It's fine. We all know that. Okay. So he decided to go to the Roman Catholic Church, and he asked Pope Clement VII if he could get an annulment, and the Pope was like, nope, absolutely not. And that's why the Church of England and the Catholic Church had separated. So, ladies, if you are ever having trouble with a boy, just know that he never changed his country's religion to break up with you. So, after the Reformation, marriage came to be a civil contract, and civil authorities exercised their right and power to decree a divortium of vinculu matrimony, which basically just means divorce from all bonds of marriage. Great. And then, after the Reformation, divorce was still considered kind of iffy. It was against the public interest, and the government was still really annoying about getting a divorce. So basically, if you wanted one, you have to prove that your spouse violated a sacred vow against you, the quote-unquote innocent spouse. But if you were both found at fault with complicity of like fucking each other over, then you had to stay in that marriage, and you could not get out. And that kid is being suffocated by those giant handcuffs. Alright, next up is the mid-1600s. This is when the Puritans were a thing. They were actually pretty progressive in terms of divorce, and they kind of moved away with assessing it with religious sacrament. They said it was a secular contract, and they kind of moved in that direction to where we are now. And then after that was the Victorian era of the 1800s. So before 1857, which is a pretty monumental year in terms of divorce, women were under economic and legal protection, and in order to divorce their husbands, it was an act of parliament, so they had to go, and it was really expensive. It was like 200 British pounds, so think 200 years ago, how much money that is, probably like, I don't know, $15,000. I'm just kidding, I know it's not that much. Right. Okay, so if you did want to get divorced, these are the things that you had to prove. Either adultery, unreasonable behavior, desertion if you haven't seen your husband for 2 years. You just like went out to get milk and, you know. Alright. Separation of an agreed divorce, also 2 years, or separation of a contested divorce, meaning somebody wanted to stay married. Okay, 5 years, cool. Which is not that different from today, actually. The only thing that's different that appears here is a midlife crisis. I don't think that they had to worry about that then because they didn't have the lifespans that we do. They probably lived like 40 years, and by that time you fall, whatever. Anyway, you know what I mean. So, fast forward 200 years, let's talk about the modern day. And let's talk, I don't know how many people are single in here, but Valentine's Day is like a time to be bitter, right? So let's talk about the people who lost the most amount of money in their divorces. All right. Steven Spielberg and Amy Irving. They wrote their prenup on a napkin in a bar. So imagine their surprise when the judge decided that that's not something that he would find valid. She took $100 million. Whenever...
How much?
That was half of his fortune.
Woo!
Good. Yeah. So, I don't have $100 million. Ellen Nordegren and Tiger Woods, whenever she found out that he was sleeping with half of Las Vegas, she took $110 million. I don't know out of how much. And then, well, this won't scroll. 1 second. All right. Mel Gibson and Robin Gibson. She took $425 million. That's half of his net worth. So he was almost a billionaire? All right, I don't know that. Madonna and Guy Ritchie. He took somewhere between $76 and $92 million. And then I was just curious about this one. Kevin Federline made away with $13 million. Okay, that's fine.
Yeah!
So make sure you don't write your prenup on a bar napkin, maybe. Okay. And then you won't have such a miserable time getting divorced. Alright. Embarrassing things that happen to other people and not to us, since we're in the spirit of being, bitter and whatever. Anybody remember what these are? Alright, well, one couple remembers these all too painfully because back in 1999, there was a serious point of contention in their divorce. They had to separate their entire Beanie Babies collection, which was at the time valued at somewhere between $2,500 and $5,000. So this is Francis Mountain and Harold Mountain. They were ordered by the judge, right there, loving his life, to divide up their Beanie Baby collection one by one on the floor. That's not the judge, that's the lawyer. The judge is out of frame here. And they spread everything out on the floor and picked one by one. The first to go, Maple the Bear. Estimated value today, $7.90. You can also get it with the England Bear and the Germany Bear for a deal of $20.78. Probably from Harold and Francis Mountain. You can just reach out to them directly. So, this Angel Fire site with the price guide was completely false. There's no gifts on here. Yeah, everybody shout out for Angel Fire. Okay. Alright. Moving on to embarrassing things. Last year in Japan, a 29-year-old woman really loved the movie Frozen. How many of you have seen it? Yeah. Is it good? I've never seen it. I hear it's really good.
It's really good.
Alright, I'll put it on the list. Okay, so she really loved that movie, and she had seen it by herself like tens of times, I don't know, probably not hundreds. And she tried to convince her husband to go see it with her, and her husband had the nerve and the gall to say, after he saw it, I didn't really care for it personally. Did you really think it was that good? So when he said that, after 6 years, she basically said, if you can't understand what makes this movie great, there's something wrong with you as a human being, before telling him that she wanted a divorce. So, okay, so apparently it must be good. It must be a good movie. Let's move on. So, if anybody's ever lost a phone at home, the first thing that you do, obviously, is ask somebody to call it, right? So, one man asked his wife to call his cell phone when it was lost, and she called it, and she heard it ring. So she walked over, and she did not get too happy whenever she picked it up and saw that she was in his phone at Valentine. So they got divorced. Okay. And so now that we went through all of those educational stories, I'll leave you with some words of wisdom about this serious topic. Men are just like a book, with a beginning, middle, and end. Yes. And it's really hard to maintain a one-on-one relationship if the other person is not going to allow me to be with other people. Says the man wearing the shirt of his own band. And, alright, that's fine. We're done.